I think I'm gonna really have a lot of fun on this bike, and that smile factor is going to increase an order of magnitude. All right, welcome back, my friends. I am here in the pine forests outside of Flagstaff, Arizona, and I'm with my brand new 2023 Honda CRF300LS. That's a mouthful. Now, the first thing you might notice is I have put some accessories on the bike. I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I have a whole other video lined up where I talk about all the things I put on the bike and the things I've done with the bike, but I just wanted to say a few words about my first impressions on this bike. I've got, I think it's like 150 miles on the bike so far. Most of those miles have been commuting in town, with the exception of one sort of large maiden voyage that I did a few days ago outside of town up to Red Mountain. And I have some thoughts on the bike. Now, if you follow this channel, you know I came from a Honda Trail 125, a small little mini moto that I was using to commute and that I was using to kind of play around on the trails. And I also have a Royal Enfield Himalayan 411 that I've had for several years, which is sort of my larger adventure bike. And the reason that I liked this bike is because I wanted something that was still small, about 300 pounds, that I could build my skills on the more technical stuff on the trails, but I wanted something that I could fit on. And initially I had thought that I wanted a rally, a CRF300L rally, but after sitting on it and realizing how tall it is, I just didn't like it. With that in mind, with that sort of background, now that I've been on the bike for a few weeks and I've had a few miles on it, what do I think? You know, what are my thoughts on the bike? And I definitely have some pros and cons already, but I don't think I'm gonna get a really in-depth feel for the bike, obviously, until I've ridden it for probably at least 1,000 miles. So here's what I can tell you. A few things that I like. I like that it's very light. I obviously love the fact that it's lower to the ground. Many of you are looking at this bike because you are shorter riders like myself. I am 5'9", 32-inch inseam, and when I sit on this bike, I can flat foot, which is really nice. I can flat foot on this bike. I wanted a bike that I could comfortably control. And when I sit on all of these dual sports, I'm always up on the tips of my toes. And so I really like that this is a bike that fits. And so if you're out there and you want a dual sport, you want a trail bike, and you are of the vertically challenged, such as myself, this is a great solution. And kudos to Honda for doing that. I'm really happy that I have a bike I can fit on. So that's one big pro. I really like how it's geared. I like that on the trails, I never feel like I'm struggling to get power. This is a 300cc, actually it's a 286cc or something like that. And I feel like I've got more oomph on this bike than I do on the Himalayan, which is crazy because this is a much smaller engine, but it has a lot of pull to it. It has a lot of acceleration compared to the Himalayan. Obviously, if I was going to compare this to something like a Tenere, it doesn't, but I feel like it's more than adequate for what I'm going to use it for. I've been on the highway on it. I've taken it up almost to 70 miles an hour. It has a 6th gear, which is fantastic. My Himalayan doesn't even have that, so I like that it has that overdrive. I like that it had a built-in accessory port behind the headlight that I could plug in my charger to. I like that it's liquid cooled. I like how responsive the brakes are. The brakes are fantastic on this bike. I like that there is a significant amount of accessories that bolt right on, fit right on, hand guards, skid plate and crash bars and all sorts of other goodies. But you know, there are things that maybe are less than ideal. For example, the gas tank is really small. It's 2 gallons. Now, obviously I knew that when I bought this bike, and I can very easily put a Rotopax on the back or some fuel canisters, but not only is it small, but I'm coming from the Trail 125 that was very efficient, and this bike is a lot thirstier than that. So just on my single ride up to Red Mountain and back, which is about 30 miles away, I went through 2/3 of a tank. So that's a little bit of a shock to me, how fast this thing swallows fuel. So that is something to keep in mind. If you want to take this bike on longer adventures, you just have to plan to carry extra fuel and stop and fill up a lot, or fit an aftermarket. There's like a 3.5 gallon tank you can put on this bike. Another downside that I've discovered that many people talk about this bike is the throttle. Basically, the throttle on this bike is aggressively responsive, I'll say. So you touch it and it lurches you forward, and as soon as you let off of it, it lurches you back. It's a little bit different from what I'm used to, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. And I know a lot of people fix that problem by putting an aftermarket ECU on the bike. I don't want to mess with the computer just yet. I want to get on the bike for 1,000 miles before I start messing with the computer. You put a new computer on, it reprograms your check engine light, it does all sorts of things. You know, I'm just a little nervous about that. So I'm gonna ride the bike with its jerky throttle and all, just to get used to it. And maybe I'll decide to just keep it as it is. Something else that I found a little bit frustrating with the bike is it was very difficult to put handguards on it. So there's a couple of different options, but my point is that, you know, the Himalayan, it was just you unscrewed the bolt, you put the guard on, you screwed it back in, boom, done. With this, I actually had to cut off the end of my grips. You know, it's just, you're sitting there on a brand new bike, hacking it away. And so that's just, it's just very nerve-wracking. You know, I haven't even paid this thing off yet, and I'm sitting there hacking it up with a hacksaw. So that's a little bit frustrating. Obviously, there's no wind protection on the bike, which, you know, again, the Rally, that's because it's not the Rally. I did buy a windshield for this bike that's sitting at home in the garage that I haven't mounted yet. It's by T-Rex Racing. I haven't decided if I want to mount it. But, you know, there's a lot of things that I like. I like that it has its own, a really nice toolbox. You can mount a really nice rack to the back. It's got fantastic suspension. Now, I know I probably just perked up a lot of eyebrows when I said that, because people always complain about the suspension on this bike being too soft. I'm coming from a Himalayan and a Trail 125. The Trail 125, I would bottom out on every single ride I would take it on. Ba-donk, ba-donk. I mean, it was awful. This thing is like butter. It just sails over stuff, smooth as can be. The 300L standard also is sprung to be a little bit stiffer than the Rally. So I think the suspension is fantastic, man. I love it. It's just like riding on a pillow, and I can't complain. Now, I'm sure down the line, after I do a bunch of technical stuff, I might change my opinion on that, but I'm telling you, for the average rider like me that just wants to putz around in the woods, have some fun, and doesn't want to, you know, go out and be some crazy, daring adventurer, and just wants to have some fun, I think the suspension on this bike is brilliant, as is, right from the factory. You can quote me on that. I know I'm going to get a lot of mixed opinions on that, but the tires, 2118, that's always a pro. You know, they're tubed. The gearing is a pro and a con. The gearing is definitely very short. So first gear, you know, maxes out like almost immediately. So it's definitely geared for slow trail riding. So one of the things that I don't know about the LS, and maybe one of you out there can help me answer this, is it's shorter, mostly because they've lowered the suspension slightly, which also means less ground clearance. So that is a con. But also, I don't know if the seat is the standard factory seat that you would get on the regular L, or if the seat is also slightly lowered. And I say that because if there comes a point when I buy, say, a seat concept seat, I don't know which one to buy. Do I buy the standard or do I buy the low? I think it's standard, but it does look a little bit thinner than when you look at pictures of the red standard L model. So I don't know. I can't seem to find a good answer to that question, but the seat, meh. You know, it's definitely narrow, perfectly comfortable for an hour or even two, but when I did that ride up to Red Mountain, I could definitely tell I was starting to sink down and touch the bottom. So would not be great on a iron butt ride, I can tell you right now, but for what it is, it's perfectly fine. I really like the instrument cluster, which may get some mixed reactions. This has everything on it that I would want. You can see we've got clock up here, we've got fuel gauge, we've got the tach, we've got the speed, We've got how many miles I've got on the bike, 144. We've got my average miles per gallon, and we've got a gear indicator up top. We've got an ABS, which it does come standard with switchable ABS, which I think is a pro. You cannot get the LS model without the ABS. You've got the turn signals, the brights, the check engine, and then this shift indicator, which I've never seen come on, so apparently I'm shifting adequately each time. A couple of buttons over here for adjustments. A very obvious con that I've missed is this. If you're not used to this awkward cable in front of you, then it takes a little while getting used to. Honestly, I don't even notice it anymore, but I know a lot of people hate this and they pull it out of the way. You know, I sit low enough where I can still see the instrument cluster perfectly fine. Another thing that I think could be argued to be a con are the lights. It's very frustrating that the Rally comes with all LED. Even the Trail 125 came with all LED, yet this bike comes with all standard halogen lights. It's 2023, come on. Why does this not have LED lights? Gas tank, it does have a lock, which is nice, but when you pull this out, you have to just kind of set the cap somewhere. Back here, I've never had a bike with a helmet clip, which is very cool. I use this all the time to mount my helmet to it. Toolbox is great. Just looking around to see if I forgot anything. Obviously, I haven't changed the oil yet or anything like that. Haven't really made any other adjustments other than putting on the accessories. Nothing on this bike has me going like, oh, this is so annoying. The only thing that I've mentioned that I think I'm gonna keep an eye on to see how I feel about it down the road is that throttle twitch. I do think that could bother a lot of people. It certainly is not ideal. I like having a throttle that's a little bit more smooth, and it's just overly responsive, and I don't really like that so far. Maybe I'll come around, but I do think if I decide ultimately that I don't like it, I probably will get that ECU update, despite the fact that it's gonna probably lower my gas mileage and probably disable my check engine light. So again, pros and cons to everything. So I love it. I love that it's light, it's nimble. I can not be scared if I want to just ride it around in off trail in the bush, so to speak. But in short, the TLDR is that I love this bike so far. I'm very happy that I made this purchase. I do miss the Trail 125, obviously, but I think I'm gonna really have a lot of fun on this bike and really hopefully build my skill set, and that smile factor is going to increase an order of magnitude. Thanks everyone. Take care, be safe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. I almost forgot, there is one other con that's a little bit annoying. The side stand is a little bit short.